Imagine a world of luxury, power, and scandal. In 17th century France, one woman's rise to the top was as dazzling as her fall was devastating. Join me as we delve into the captivating tale of Madame de Montespan and the dark secrets that led to her ultimate downfall in the infamous Affair of the Poisons, a scandal which threatened to bring down the monarchy itself. The celebrated lover of King Louis XIV of France, Madame de Montespan, was a woman of intellect and magnetism who enraptured the Sun King. Born into nobility, she was famed not only for her radiant beauty, but also for her sparkling wit and irresistible charm. These captivating traits swiftly made her the favorite of the most influential man in all of France. She bore the king 7 children, thus further solidifying their complex bond. However, this story extends far beyond mere documentation of royal romance. In July 1667, when Madame de Montespan ascended to become the official mistress of the Sun King, she knew that her journey was just beginning. As the years went by, the royal favorite and mother of 7 was starting to lose her hold on the king and seeing her position threatened by younger women. The late 17th century was a time when the lines between science and superstition were blurred, and the fear of the unknown led many to dabble in the forbidden. When King Louis's attention started to turn towards the Duchess of Fontanges, suspicion began to circulate that Madame de Montespan might be resorting to extreme measures to regain his affection. Montespan, desperate to maintain her hold on the king, found herself drawn to the murky world of aphrodisiacs and black masses, hoping to reignite the king's ardor. Aphrodisiacs, potions believed to stimulate desire, were commonplace in this era, but it was the black masses that truly marked Montespan's descent into the dark arts. These were not simple prayers, but elaborate rituals, often performed at night, invoking the powers of the underworld in a bid to manipulate fate. Enter Catherine Monvoisin, or as she was more commonly known, La Voisin. La Voisin was a fortune-teller, a midwife, and to some, a witch. She had a reputation for being able to provide solutions to life's most challenging problems, and for Montespan, she became a beacon in her darkest hour. Together, they wove a web of intrigue and deception, with Montespan as the desperate spider and La Voisin as the cunning weaver, but the threads of their plot were to become tangled in ways they could not foresee, leading to dire consequences for both. When Mademoiselle de Fontanges, the king's new favorite, suddenly died, whispers of poisoning began to circulate. Did Montespan go as far as murdering her rival? Were human sacrifices involved? These questions would soon come to haunt the French court as the scandal of the Affair of the Poisons began to unfold. The probe into the scandal made a shocking detour when Montespan was accused of involvement in these dreadful deeds. This included her alleged participation in a black mass officiated by a priest named Etienne Guibourg, where an infant was sacrificed over her naked body. The evidence against La Voisin was as startling as it was incriminating. Authorities discovered potions, aphrodisiacs, and, most shockingly, remnants of what they assumed to be human sacrifices in her house. A connection between Montespan and the infamous sorceress was further revealed, fanning the flames of the already blazing scandal. But it was rumors of human sacrifices that truly rocked Parisian society. Whispers suggested infants had been the victims, their innocent lives extinguished in the pursuit of power and pleasure. This was no idle gossip. There were testimonies, chilling accounts from La Voisin's accomplices, confessing to procuring and sacrificing children at black masses. The public was aghast, yet intrigue mounted as inconsistencies emerged in these testimonies, some pointing towards Montespan's maid, Mademoiselle Desoyers, raising about her possible involvement. As the scandal unfolded, the city was gripped by fear and disbelief. How could such atrocities occur in their midst? And could a woman as distinguished as Madame de Montespan really be implicated in such a scandal? The affair of the Poissons was more than just a scandal. It was a terrifying revelation, a grim tale of ambition, desire, and the desperate lengths to which individuals might stretch to fulfill them. The accusations against Montespan were as scandalous as they were shocking. The woman once considered the king's favorite, the object of many's envy, was now under intense scrutiny, her reputation in ruins. She was now perceived not as the king's beloved, but as a woman potentially involved in most heinous of crimes. The court, the city, indeed, the entirety of France held its breath, eager for the king's response. So, how did the king respond to these shocking allegations against his favorite mistress? Would love blind the king to the alleged sins of his favored mistress? As the scandal The Poisons affair began to unravel, additional layers of intrigue emerged, casting a shadow over the court of King Louis XIV. Alongside his mistress, Madame de Montespan, who was once the apple of his eye, but now tainted with the stench of suspicion and scandal, other figures began to loom ominously. One such figure was Claude de Vindewaillet, whose speculations of plotting against the king added to the tumult. Furthermore, Olympia Mancini, the Countess of Soissons and sister of Louis's first love, was also implicated. King Louis, known as the Sun King, found himself in the throes of a profound dilemma. His duty ran as deep as the River Seine, and he was torn between his affection for Montespan and his obligation to uphold the sanctity of his kingdom. As the evidence against Montespan and the others mounted, so did the king's unease. Whispers of their involvement in black masses, aphrodisiacs, even human sacrifices echoed through the halls of Versailles. Louis could not turn a deaf ear to these accusations, for he was the guardian of his people's faith and morals. His judgment, when it came, was swift and decisive. Regardless of his affections, he couldn't allow his court to be a breeding ground for such heinous acts. The king's love for Montespan, or any regard he had for the plotters, could not overshadow his duty as a ruler. He banished them from court, a clear statement to all that no one, not even the king's mistress, was above the law. But this wasn't just a public verdict. It was also a personal reckoning for the king. His heart might have ached for the woman he once loved, and he may have been disconcerted by the betrayal of others in his court, but his duty demanded justice. It was a bitter pill to swallow, but swallow it he for the sake of his kingdom. Not everyone was thrilled with that judgment. Police chief and main investigator Lorraine is alleged to have said, "When the dust settles, what becomes of those implicated in such a scandal?" As the scandal of the poison affairs unfolded, the fate of La Voisin and her accomplices was sealed. They were all brought to trial, the evidence against them damning. La Voisin, the figurehead of this sinister syndicate, was declared guilty. Her penalty was severe and swift. She met her end by fire at the stake in February of 1680. Her life snuffed out in the same brutal way she had taken many others. Her accomplices, those who had assisted her in her wicked acts, were not spared either. Many met a similar infernal fate, while others were deported or sentenced to life imprisonment. The repercussions of the scandal echoed through the court and society, shattering trust and nurturing a culture of suspicion. Many of the once powerful were now treated with mistrust. This scandal unveiled the dark underworld of the court, a realm of black masses, aphrodisiacs, and human sacrifices, generating a wave of public disillusionment. The king himself could not escape this distrust, as many questioned his judgment and his capability to manage his court. Amidst the turmoil, Louvois, Jean-Baptiste Colbert, and Madame de Maintenon collaborated to suppress the matter to prevent further scandal, a formidable task that showed their dedication to preserving the image of the court. In the end, Madame de Montespan's desperate attempts to retain power led to her downfall. It's a chilling reminder of how far some are ready to go for love and power. In 1691, falling out of royal favor, Madame de Montespan took a step back, retreating to the Field de Saint-Joseph convent in Paris. She exchanged her life of scandal and power for solitude and contemplation, supported by a generous pension of 500,000 francs from Louis. The king, in a gesture of gratitude or perhaps guilt for her departure, ensured she was well cared for. He further awarded her brother the title of Duc de Vivonne and made him a Marshal of France. The king also proved his generosity to her family by appointing her sister, Gabrielle, a woman known for her surpassing beauty, intellect, wit, as the abbess of the affluent Fontevraud Abbey back in 1670. Madame de Montespan began a new chapter in her life in 1700 when she purchased the Château d'Oiron, leaving the hospice of Fontevraud in 1703 and settling in her new residence the next year following Gabrielle's death. Her retirement was not one of seclusion, but of connection. She built friendships with notable figures of her time, including the playwright Pierre Corneille, the poet Jean Racine, and the fabulist Jean de La Fontaine. These friendships, born out of shared intellectual pursuits, served as a stark contrast to the politically motivated alliances of her past. Becoming a lavish patron of arts and literature, she transformed herself from a figure of scandal to a benefactor of the less fortunate, donating generously to hospitals and charities. Her death on May 27, 1707, at nearly 67, while seeking treatment for an illness at Bourbon-l'Archambault, deeply affected her three youngest children. Despite this, the king prohibited them from mourning her death. Madame de Montespan's life was a roller coaster of power, scandal, and redemption. Despite the scandals that surrounded her, she remains a fascinating figure in French history, emblematic of the complexities and intrigues of the royal court during the reign of the Sun King.